start here. Democratic Alliance leader John Steenhuisen is in Phoenix today campaigning ahead of the by-election in eThekwini's Ward 110. This in the wake of the budget vote on Wednesday and the fallout as well as possible end of the GNU partnership. Our reporter Ayanda Mhlongo is on the story and joins us now. Good afternoon, Ayanda. Are you there?
Those of you who are familiar with eThekwini would know that this is where I began my political career. I'm very passionate about the city, and I'm very concerned about the issues facing this particular city at the moment. There's a lot of concern around service delivery, good, clean, accountable governance and the like. And we obviously want to have a big focus on infrastructure. Being in government in the province, with a number of MECs now within the province that are DA MECs, it gives us an opportunity to really help influence matters here in KwaZulu-Natal and of course here in eThekwini. It's obviously very important that residents come out and vote on a by-election. It's very important that they exercise that right, because your ward councillor is your closest point of contact between yourself and government, and you get the election result that comes from your turnout and attendance. And don't let other people make the decision for you. Make sure that your voice is heard loud and clear on election day. I'm also sure that many people are very interested in the events of the last 48 hours within government, and certainly the events that occurred in Parliament with the fiscal framework. Let me be very clear. The Democratic Alliance went into government because we want to help grow the economy and we want to create jobs. The economy and jobs are the top issue for all South Africans across all race groups. If we don't get our economy moving, then we will not create the jobs that we need. The reality is that last year we had 0.6% economic growth. That is not good enough. It's not fast enough, and it is not nearly enough to be able to advance our country forward on an economic basis. And therefore we have to get economic growth going in the country. The DA also entered government to be part of government and not to be mere spectators. We need to be in the wheelhouse of government where we can determine the economic direction of the country, not just merely swabbing the decks down below. And that has been the reason and the issues that have characterized the last few weeks of talks and negotiations between the DA and the ANC. We don't seek to dominate government. We fully accept that we do not have a 51% majority. But equally so, no other party has 51% in the government of national unity. And that means that parties have to work together. They have to compromise, and they have to be allowed to have their voice heard loud and clear within that government. It is not tenable or sustainable to be a part of a government that cuts you out of key decision-making areas, whether that is economic policy, whether it's foreign policy. The government of national unity is not a continuation of the sixth administration. It is a new government, a government that reflects the will of the people and reflects the electoral outcome of last year. And that electoral outcome is that there is no majority party. There are only minority parties, and those parties must work together. Now let me be very clear. We are committed to the government of national unity, and we entered the government of national unity because we think it is the right thing to do for the people of South Africa. But it then has to become a genuine power-sharing relationship. It cannot simply be that one party says to another party that consensus means you agree with everything we put on the table and you don't agree with anything that we don't agree with anything you put on the table. And so we are seeking ways in which we can ensure that there is a balance within the government of national unity of those particular issues. 5 weeks ago, we put on the table in Parliament and in the subcommittee at Cabinet a proposal that would see a fiscal framework passed that did not include a VAT increase. That was rejected at the time, and we were told unequivocally that in fact there was no ways this budget could be passed without a VAT increase. We disagreed. We showed the numbers. We showed how it could be done. And it's ironic that we find ourselves now in the same position that we were 5 weeks ago, with a solution now that wants to exclude that. The reality is, however, that the fiscal framework that was passed by Parliament still includes a VAT increase, and we find that problematic. And so we're going to be working, as you know already, we've gone to court to interdict the VAT increase from taking place on the 1st of May. As you know, many retailers and many companies have already sent out notices to their clients about that. But we will also try and find a way forward through this impasse, because we believe that it is in South Africa's interest to have stable and accountable government in the country. And so we're willing to talk to any party who wants to grow the economy and create jobs within the GNU to find a way forward on that. And there is still a long way to go in this process. What we passed, well, what Parliament passed, was not the budget, as some people would like to say. It was the fiscal framework, the Division of Revenue Act, the Taxation Laws Amendment Bill, as well as the other instruments of the budget, were only coming to Parliament over the next 2 months. And so there is still time, if there is a commitment from all parties to genuinely focus on power sharing and inclusive government, to find each other. And we are certainly, our door is open. We remain available to talk, but it has to be on the basis that we move to a system of genuine power sharing, and not just a situation where we are reduced to bystanders in a government for which we bring 22% of the vote for in Parliament. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's take some questions. I'll take SEPA from ENCA at number 2. All right, just those two.
Yes, Ayanda Mhlongo from ENCA. In hindsight, I know you've gone to court to challenge what transpired in Parliament. In hindsight, do you think you voted in a manner that is correct, or do you regret voting or not supporting the fiscal framework in Parliament? That's number one. Number two, the question is, are you staying or leaving the GNU? What is the FedEx decision in that regard?
Sure.
Are you staying or are you leaving? Also, have you resumed talk or other talks with the ANC currently as we speak? Is it true that a number of business people and organizations have written to you as the federal leader of the DA and Mr. Ramaphosa as the leader of the ANC to say you must make this work at all costs? Have you received any letters from the business community? In your capacity as the Minister of Agriculture, what is your comment on the Trump administration's trade tariffs that have been imposed on South Africa? Agricultural projects or rather agricultural products will be affected.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a lot of questions.
That's a lot of questions. Let me start with those. Thank you, thank you, SEPA Mandla. No, I don't regret voting against it for a number of reasons. Firstly, the committee process that was followed was unlawful and irregular. The process that Parliament adopted to process the fiscal framework was not in line with the Money Bills Amendment Act. And I think that the court case will show that quite clearly. And it would be wrong for any party that respects due process and the rule of law to permit a process like that to remain unchallenged, because it sets a precedent for how we will do it next year and the year after. And so it's very important that we do get legal clarity on that issue. The other matter that we've taken to court is, of course, the issue around the powers of a single minister without any reference to anybody else or Parliament to be able to raise VAT. We believe that that is a lacuna in the law, and there does need to be some legal clarity on that, given the fact that now budgets are going to be very different to the way budgets have been processed in the last 30 years. So we don't regret that at all. Secondly, we will obviously proceed with that. Whether we stay in the GNU or not, that is a matter for the federal executive to decide. We had an initial FedEx on over the course of Thursday and Friday, but we have not made a decision one way or the other, and the FedEx will continue to meet and assess the current situation. I did receive a letter from business people who are rightly concerned about the future of the country, because The other options on the table are very difficult options. There could be a minority government, which will then live from parliamentary sitting to parliamentary sitting, and every single item on the order paper will become like the fiscal framework was, where there will be horse trading and uncertainty about whether there is a majority. That's no way to run a government. And so we need to make sure that whatever we're doing, it's to make sure that we're acting in the best interest of the country. And I have no doubt that the federal executive, when it applies its mind, obviously waiting to see the events or how events unfold, the federal executive will make that decision at the appropriate time, and then we, as the persons in government, will deploy that. So I can't answer your question whether we're in or out yet. At this stage, we're waiting to see how things unfold. But we did receive a letter from business, indeed, and I think we've seen the market's reaction to a government without the DA. R1 trillion wiped off the JSE just as a result of a market reaction to a potential that the DA would no longer be in government. And so I do think that careful thought needs to be given to the next steps, and that cool heads need to prevail. And I think that we need to sit down rationally and try and find a way through this. But that can only happen if there is a genuine commitment to power sharing. And I think that is very important. As I said very clearly in my comments in Parliament during the question session, I think the tariffs are unfortunate. I think the method of calculation is also not correct. I think that the method that's been used to get us to the 30% mark is relying on statistics that are not linked actually to the trade deficit. And I think it is unfortunate because it's going to put South African agricultural products and particularly automotive manufacturing under huge pressure. And the people who will bear the cost of that are not the politicians making the decisions. It's going to be farmers and farm workers. It's going to be manufacturers and people with factory jobs. And I think that we should be doing whatever we can across government to be able to protect those particular jobs. In the agricultural space, you would know that I've already cautioned that we need to prepare for a post-AGOA world where we do lose preferential access to the US market. In light of that, I have for the last 2 to 3 months in my capacity as agricultural minister been visiting other countries to look at how we could expand our markets for South African agricultural products to those other countries, to lessen the shock in November should AGOA not proceed, and to look how we can place those products in other countries. That means a twofold process. It means looking very carefully at existing markets and seeing are we maximizing those, and secondly opening up new markets. And there's huge opportunities, I believe, in the Middle East. I think there's huge opportunities in Southeast Asia and in other parts of the world where we can find a good reception for our agricultural products. You've seen already we've been able to land them in apples again in Thailand. We've got table grapes going to the Philippines. We look to open up wine and other products, citrus, to Japan. We've had some very good constructive discussions on my last trip there. And so that's going to have to be the approach. I'm sure by now you've seen the joint statement that was put out by Minister Tau and Minister Lamola around our approach going forward on these particular issues. We had a meeting as ministers affected in this a few nights ago, and a strategy was devised going forward, and I think that both those ministers have made public pronouncements on that. And as long as I'm in my position, I will continue to execute that strategy of looking for alternative market access, while at the same time working on improving our relationship with the United States. And on that side of the equation, we have deployed or sent an agricultural attaché to Washington, a very senior official from my department, Dr. Jafta, who landed in Washington in the first week of March. And it's his job to go and deal with some of the outstanding issues that the US obviously has with their ability to access the South African market on trade. I hope that covers all of the questions.
Thank you.
that were
Ayanda
asked.
from the SABC.
Right. So my little book, But John, just to follow up, you mentioned engagement with other parties, and I know that the Democratic Alliance is very clear on parties that they will not work within the Parliament. If you can just maybe, which other parties then are you in discussions with? If the ANC, for example, does not budge on the fiscal framework.
Well, let me just be very clear, because I think it is important. Not once, not ever, during all of the weeks of discussions that we've had with our GNU partners on this impasse around the fiscal framework and VAT, have we engaged with any single party outside of the GNU. Ahead of the fiscal framework vote in Parliament, we had no meetings with any parties outside of the GNU. And so obviously the parties that we will engage with are parties within the GNU, and particularly parties like the Inkatha Freedom Party, because we have a very special relationship with them here in KwaZulu-Natal. And it is the DA votes here in KwaZulu-Natal that are keeping this government in office. And my concern is that there will be knock-on effects if there are changes at a national level that could manifest themselves provincially. And so we will be speaking with the IFP, and we will continue to engage the GNU partners. When you enter into a coalition agreement with individuals, you agree that you will try and resolve those issues in-house. And we will continue to do those discussions with parties within the GNU, not outside of the GNU, because we signed a statement of intent that said we would seek to find consensus within the GNU. And so any party that's in the GNU, we will be talking to and discussing a way forward, particularly given the events of the last week. But we will not seek talks with parties outside of the GNU.
Right, I'm going to take the last question, because we also do have a campaign trail to get back onto. And you've already asked a question, Sipa, so
You can ask another one.
No, sorry, I'm sharing the screen.
He's paying for the microphone.
All right, is there anyone else from the media? All right, Sipa, so as the chief whip, you can have the...
The dean of the media corps.
Do you feel internally in your own party that maybe your head is on the chopping block over the GNU?
I think as leader, your head's always on the chopping block, no matter whether it's a GNU or anything else. And, that's why they say, uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. And I think it's the same for every leader. I think it's the same for Mr. Ramaphosa. I think it's the same for Mr. Shlabisa, and it's the same for me. Look, I took a big leap of faith in going into the GNU. I spent a lot of time talking my party through why I thought it was the right thing to do, why I still think it was the right thing to do by South Africa and by South Africa's people. And I will obviously do whatever I can to take my party along with me. But I've been, there certainly has been no tensions or the like within the Democratic Alliance about this. I think everybody agrees we should approach with caution any decision, because it will have grave implications for the country, as we've seen, and that decision must be made based on facts, on the situation, and obviously looking forward into the future. And that's why we haven't rushed to make a decision. We are assessing the situation, assessing the facts. We're obviously speaking to our voters. We're talking to people within the party, and the federal executive will ultimately make a decision on the future of that. And I'm confident that that decision will be enjoy the support of the majority of the Democratic Alliance. As I said at the beginning, we entered because we want to grow the economy and create jobs. But to do that, we have to be given some say in the future direction. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck with 0.6% growth next year, still trying to get these basic reforms through. And I don't think the things that we are asking for are unreasonable. Unlocking of the ports, making sure that we look at how procurement is done, so we don't pay 500 Rand for a broom at Eskom and 800 Rand for knee pads. I think we're looking at ways in which we can ensure that we adopt spending reviews, so we don't have to look at taxes and VAT every year to raise things. And I think the things that we're asking for are reasonable, they're rational, And I sincerely hope that parties that want to come to a solution about how we grow the economy and create jobs would find common cause on that. And as I say, our door remains open to all parties within the GNU to have a discussion around that regard. As I said, there's still some way to go in terms of the processing of the budget, and we will obviously engage in those processes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everybody.
For joining us.
And to the Bridge Mahons for having us at their wonderful home.
All right, you're going to come out of those live proceedings there where John Steenhuisen, the leader of the DA, is out campaigning in Phoenix and Durban, took the opportunity to also spell out their current grievances with the current developments within the government of national unity. He mentioned that they did not want the budget passed and will be heading to court to seek counsel. And he also reiterated that they do not want to dominate the ANC within the GNU. They simply just want to ensure that they focus on power sharing within the GNU, as no party won outright majority in the recently held poll. So their differing views on some decisions should not then be taken as them being a rogue or divisive entity, but should be noted instead as a democratic principle in light, of course, of the current governance arrangement. He did also confirm that they are continuing to meet about their future within the GNU, a decision he says will be taken by the party's Federal Council.